Tales from the Tool Shed, Night 1. So I destroyed all the equipment and our only modes of transportation. The rest of the team has trapped me here, even though I told them I'm doing better now, and that was just a momentary lapse of judgment. For some reason, they didn't buy it. I told McReady to watch out for Clark the dog handler, but to be honest, I don't think he's infected. I just hate him, and his whole vibe. God, he's such a bummer of a person. Anyways, I'm gonna go dig a hole and build a spaceship now. This is the thing.
All right, cool. Hell yeah.
Just imagine like Wilford Brimley having a little diary.
Yeah.
I had no idea what to write for this one.
Yeah, you had some trouble with it?
Yeah, I told you. I was like, I have no idea what to write for this one.
That's fair, yeah.
But anyways.
But you did it, yeah, we're here now.
You know what's funny? Like, this is our second time podcasting about The Thing, because the first ever podcast that you and I ever did was The Thing, and it was a trial episode.
Mm-hmm. It's only on Patreon. I think it's still there too.
It's only on Patreon, and it was just like we never intended it to be public on YouTube. It was purely a thing that we're like, okay, this is gonna be our first time doing a podcast. We just want to see how it goes, and we'll upload it on Patreon. And all these episodes later, we're finally here.
Yeah, The Thing's been kind of a huge movie for our channel. It's been like, we reacted to it and we podcasted on it once, and now we're podcasting on it again.
So I looked it up, and I have it right here. Let me see. We uploaded this video October 25th, 2021.
Wow.
Isn't that nuts?
Almost 3 years ago?
Almost 3 years.
That's crazy. I actually didn't know that.
I'm going to introduce this podcast first before we get going, but I'm Altaf.
And I'm Chris.
And this is Movies That Changed Us, and today we're going to explore how The Thing changed us. And if you're listening to this, no, I'm still going.
Yeah, that's right. I know. I almost jumped on you. I apologize. Go ahead.
Fucking step on me.
Very sorry.
Don't you dare. If you're listening to this on Spotify, you can also watch us on YouTube at Movies That Changed Us.
And we also have a Patreon if you guys want to check it out at patreon.com/nicedudemovienight, where you can get all sorts of exclusive goodies. And we also have a new show called Scenes That Changed Us, where we cover specifically scenes. It's basically the same thing as the show, but we cover one specific scene that we want to do every month.
So, The Thing, right? We upload this reaction, got a great response, and it kind of changed our channel. So this was 3 years ago. And back then, I think we were trying to figure out what kind of movies we wanted to react to. Our first ever reaction video we ever did was the Birdemic reaction, which is still up. And we started that just off the pure basis of like, okay, pandemic time. We used to do short films. We can't do that anymore. Let's just watch a movie and we'll make fun of it. And we'll do bad movies. And I was the one, I remember, that was always kind of like iffy about reacting to bad movies. It was just not my thing. I'm not the biggest fan of the so bad it's good. I'm nothing against people who do, but it's just not my thing. And it was like, okay, this doesn't feel like our vibe. And so we did a mix. We kept doing them. We didn't quite know which ones to tackle. And then when we uploaded The Thing, it was like oh no, we could do this. We could actually watch really good classic movies. And we've talked also about how Spaceballs was a big turning point when it turns into like what kind of comedies people like watching. But we also realized with The Thing that we could watch like high quality movies as well. It doesn't have to be like very culty B, like bad movies all the time.
Yeah. I mean, The Thing came out well before Spaceballs too. The Thing was kind of like, I remember leading up to it, we were kind of worried about it too at one point, because at that point we'd done like the Twilight movies. And I remember leading up to The Thing, there was a period where you were worried about people not being interested in watching the whole thing because, it might not be as entertaining if it's a good movie.
Yeah.
And I remember it was like a weird, it's so weird looking back on that, because then, and the rest is history, right? We spent 3 years just doing good movies, pretty much.
We also fought during the editing, and this fight did kind of change, like, the length of our videos we put up, because I remember before we used to edit our videos to where like 20 minutes would be like, okay, this is a long video. But okay.
I miss those days, don't you?
But back then we used to keep it super fucking tight. It was like 15 minutes. Again, we were like going way off of like those just regular Drew Gooden type people where it was just like, oh, it's just a commentary. It's not a reaction. It's a little bit more than that. And I think The Thing, I cut it that way. And I remember you looked at it and you were like, I think it should be like, I think we should let some scenes breathe a bit more. and I think it can be longer. And I think I fought with you on that pretty heavily because I knew I had to go back and re-edit it a lot because it wouldn't just be stretching out some stuff. I edit in a specific way where I'm adding effects and everything, so it would be a pain in the ass. We fought on that. Ended up ended up being right. There are certain scenes that need to breathe a bit more. So I don't know what the total length of that video is now, but it did change the way I edit. It did change the way we like look at our videos. I was like, okay, it's okay to be a little bit longer.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that too, because I think there was, even before that specific conflict happened, I cut together some of the highlights for you so you can do the bells and whistles and the, fun little effects. And I remember you came up and asked me, like, did you even cut it down at all at one point because they were so long? And I was like, well, I didn't really know what else. Like, this is a long moment, and I think you should figure out how to cut it down, but it was a little long. There was like a weird period where, I think for some reason that one just spoke to me. That one needed to breathe a little bit more. And it's funny because that video is probably super short compared to how they are now.
Let me look it up.
But it did start the trajectory of where our channel went.
Well, yeah, it's funny because this video is 16 minutes long.
Is it 16 minutes?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and think about that. I was like, this is too long.
I know. That's so wild. We made a 16-minute reaction to the thing.
I know. I mean, now it'd be like 40 minutes long. And
exactly. But, going off of what you said, though, I do remember, like, it was our first, like, good movie reaction, but we still had a blast shooting it. It felt like we were being ourselves, because that was a problem we had, too, when we were doing bad movies, is we kind of felt like we weren't ourselves. We were trying to be comedians more than we were trying to be just a couple guys hanging out watching a movie.
Yeah, and it's like the most raw reaction that we had up until that point. Like when, like you said, we weren't trying to think of a joke or we weren't trying to think of like a line that we could say. It was like, oh my God, that dog is turning into this alien. What the hell? I didn't know that was this movie.
Whoa, fuck! Oh, holy shit! What the fuck is happening? What the fuck?
And okay, so that being said, this was also my first, I don't know if for you, but it was my first non-Halloween John Carpenter movie.
Same here. Yeah, same here.
So it was our first introduction to like this filmmaker in a way that was outside of Halloween, because Halloween, yes, it's very much a John Carpenter movie. It's what made him, but also Halloween is its like own entity, I feel like. And the thing was our kind of introduction to like who this guy is, what he's capable of.
Yeah.
When he has all the resources, and we'll talk about it. I mean, this movie was definitely like when he was at his height and he had just like the money to like pull off these special effects. And through that, we were like, okay, let's explore Big Trouble in Little China. And I know personally, I've been trying to watch his other movies. Like since then, I've seen Assault on Precinct 13. I've seen The Fog.
Sure, yeah.
In the Mouth of Madness. These are movies that I'm just seeing on my own now just because I'm like obsessed with this guy.
Yeah. I mean, I know I've still only seen the ones that we've watched on the channel. I haven't watched any other ones. The one I really want to see is In the Mouth of Madness, because
it has Sam Neill in it.
I mean, Sam Neill. Yeah, I can never complain about Sam Neill. And I also know it had, people always recommend it if you're into like Lovecraftian horror, which I am very much into.
Yeah, it's like an amazing, like, I don't think it's underrated anymore.
Yeah,
but it is like that level of like. It's not talked about the way this movie's talked about.
Sure.
And also, this was also like my first like Kurt Russell movie that, I mean, I hate to say it, but it was the first Kurt Russell movie that wasn't a Tarantino movie or wasn't a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
And I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's so true. And now I'm just like, again, I've also seen it. Speaking of John Carpenter, I've also seen Escape from New York, Escape from LA. I've seen Overboard. Like, I'm actively like searching for new Kurt Russell. Like, I've seen Stargate. Like,
that's so crazy because I don't think that might be the same for me, actually. I'm trying to think, like, what other Kurt Russell movies have I seen? Like, I
mean, you've now seen Big Trouble in Little China.
Well, no, I'm talking about, that isn't John Carpenter as well.
We both haven't seen Tombstone.
Oh, yeah,
which is a movie that's been on our list for a while. I think we'll eventually do it on the reaction channel. But, like, we both haven't seen that. And that's a big one.
I think I shared this on the Big Lebowski episode that we did, but I weirdly get Jeff Bridges and Kurt Russell mixed up in my head. So, like, I almost said, oh, True Grit, right?
That's so funny.
It's a very strange thing, yeah.
Have you seen? I thought you've seen Bone Tomahawk.
No, I've heard of that one.
Because
I've
I
heard of that
remember
one.
we scrolled by it while we were on a streamer like one night, and you were just like, "Oh, Bone Tomahawk, have you seen that?" So I thought you knew
No,
it.
I've heard of that one. I've seen clips. There's like a famous scene from it that because I've watched lists of like top 10 most horrifying scenes of all time, and I just saw a clip from Bone Tomahawk that's not very pretty. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about.
No spoilies.
I'm not
'cause
gonna
I don't know anything about
No
that movie.
spoilies. We should start. That should be that should be our little podcast phrase. No spoilies. Welcome to the No Spoilies podcast.
No spoilies. All right, we'll do it.
No spoilies, guys. Start commenting. No spoilies. Make it a thing.
Oh God,
Catch it on. Just gross him out.
Well, it just feels gross on two levels. One is saying no spoilies, and two, the
Me
fact
trying
that
to make it a thing.
like manufacturing a meme feels so wrong.
That's like fetch. Stop trying to make fetch happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop trying to make spoilies happen.
Exactly. Except we're trying to make it happen. So yeah, when it comes to the theme of this podcast, which is movies that changed us, this movie changed us because aside from the actual movie itself, when it comes to like what it's exploring, we were introduced to new aspects of cinema. Kurt Russell and John Carpenter. I mean, like,
Yeah, and like a whole new type of horror. At least for me,
for me as well.
I mean, I've seen and experienced several things that were clearly inspired by the thing. Like I played a lot of like Dead Space when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that game has a lot of alien body horror. Like there's a lot of stuff that kind of clicked when I realized how much stuff took from the thing.
Oh, I mean, that's like the exciting part about watching this movie is that you watch this movie and suddenly this whole world opens up for you of all the stuff that you've consumed. I mean, this could be like Stranger Things and all the other 80s like inspired wave that's been going on since 2014 basically. Is all pulling from John Carpenter and The Thing,
Yeah.
Along with Stephen King and Spielberg and all that stuff. But like John Carpenter and specifically The Thing have such a big influence.
Well, they're remaking or just remastering the Thing video game too. That was for PS2, but now they're coming out with it for PS5.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. I never played it, but I did hear it was an underrated game. Like a lot of people really like it. So I do kind of want to play it when it comes out for PS5.
Yeah. Now I think like even with Annihilation, there's certain just any like alien related movie, any body horror type movie, I'm always thinking of this movie. This movie's like kind of always in the back of my mind.
Yeah, it's weird because like it's obviously it's sci-fi horror, but it doesn't get as overtly existential as a lot of sci-fi horror movies get. Like Annihilation is much more existential. I love Annihilation. That movie is fucking awesome. That's probably one of my other favorite sci-fi horror movies.
You watched for the first time like a month ago.
Not a month ago, probably like 6 months ago or something like that, but still.
Oh, you showed it. That's right. You showed it to your girlfriend a month ago.
No. Also like 6 months ago.
Time is weird.
Yeah, I was going to say that's just incorrect. I'm sorry. The thing, what's interesting about it to me at least, is it's kind of just pure kind of horror and suspense, but it doesn't have those like big existential questions that a lot of sci-fi movies have.
But that's the thing. It does. Like
it does, but it doesn't overtly do it. It lets you figure it out on your own. Like there's like a relationship you have with it while you watch it.
I was going to say that is that like it totally has all those questions, all those deep meanings, but you have to pull it out of it. Like that's what I love about it so much. Like even Alien, which I thought about Alien a lot while watching this movie because there's a lot of similarities you can pull from it of a group of people fighting this thing that they don't understand. And at the end of it, just understand that all they have to do is survive. They can't beat it. But even Alien has a sense of closure to it with Ripley finally like shooting it out into the vacuum of space, which is amazing. We love Alien. And it also has like the whole perfect organism monologue, which is clearly the movie's revealing its cards and showing you what it's really about, right? Yeah. Again, love Alien. The Thing doesn't have that. The Thing doesn't have Blair sitting down and being like, what have humans come to? Like, there's not, all these guys are just like, what the hell is that? Let's burn it down. All right, shit, we can't defeat it. We're all going to die. We're not making it out of here. All right, so let's burn this entire place down. What's amazing about it, though, is that watching it this time, I was thinking so much about like COVID lockdown and how much it reminded me of that, of like the feeling of being scared of someone else and not trusting them because they might carry something.
Yeah.
I was scared of I was thinking a lot about like how the Thing, what it does is it tries to create the perfect replica of what it's transmuting itself into. and it ends up looking like something that you recognize, and it doesn't even, you can't even tell, but it is the monster. So I thought a lot about just like the monsters in real life, whether it's like the people that have been called out during the Me Too movement or our politicians. They look just like us and they sometimes act just like us, but we don't know who they really are.
I know.
And that's what's cool about this movie, is that it's not saying any of that. It's not trying to explore that. And John Carpenter in every interview always just says, oh, no. We just wanted to make like what a monster movie is. I really love the 1950s movie, so we wanted to use the special effects of today. Like John Carpenter has no inclination to explain that movie to you.
Do you think he does that on purpose? Like, do you think he had a lot more to say underneath, or do you think he really was just that bare bones about it and people are kind of just overly picking it apart?
Well, that's the great...
Because John Carpenter could be one or the other.
That's the great mystery of him, is that like he is... In a lot of his movies, he keeps them so simple. I mean, Big Trouble in Little China is not this way, but the joke of that movie is how convoluted it is.
Sure.
Like every other scene, there's something else that's going on, and Kurt Russell's like, what the hell?
That feels like that's the experience of watching Big Trouble in Little China, though.
You're not supposed to understand what's going on.
Yeah, that's kind of almost like the joke behind the movie.
But in all his movies, Halloween, The Thing, The Fog, Assault on Precinct 13, a lot of his movies are like about what they're about. And they're so bare and stripped down, but the reason you can pull so much meaning from them, and the reason that there's been so many essays on a lot of his movies, is because he leaves it open for you to like grab meaning into.
Yeah, or even like embrace the horror behind that there's no meaning. You know, like something like Michael Myers, what makes Michael Myers scary, at least in the very first Halloween movie, is that there's no real explanation for why he's so evil or why he wants to kill people. He wants to kill you just because he wants to watch you die. That's it. You know what I mean? And that's kind of scary in its own way.
And that's why the sequels are so counterintuitive.
Yeah, I know, right? We don't have to get into that. But the same thing applies to The Thing. It's literally just called The Thing. There's no name, you know, like even like something like giving it a name like the xenomorph, right? You know, having an egg and having like, you can kind of imagine its life cycle a little bit.
Well,
but for something like,
you can also look at the xenomorph and understand it.
You can understand its physiology.
You're like, okay, it has legs, it has a head, it has a mouth.
Exactly. Yeah. It has human-like features that you can kind of connect with. And I think something like The Thing, that you don't even know what its true form looks like. I mean, people have even theorized that the ship that crashed in, that could be an imitation. Like it could have took over another planet.
Did that theory come after Nope?
Oh, I don't know, actually. I read it just somewhere online in comments and stuff. I'm not sure.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
I guess spoilies for Nope. I'm sorry.
Spoilies.
But yeah, so when it comes to the answering your question about John Carpenter, I don't know.
Yeah, he might not even really care. He's just like, I just want to make something scary. Cool. Why are people fixated on the why?
But I love that about him.
No.
But I will say, if you watch his interviews, the one thing that he is very clear about is the disdain that he has for humans. Like just people. He hates fucking people, and he talks about that very clearly. And when you watch his movies, that's always what he's kind of getting at, is that like we have this evil inside of us. Mm-hmm. And maybe he didn't explain that with The Thing, but that is what The Thing is. Like, we have this inside of us. It's inside all of us.
Yeah, yeah.
At least that's what I was thinking a lot about while watching this movie.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, like, I think to me, you know, kind of going back to what we were saying earlier, like not understanding it, is that's what kind of connects with me so strongly. And it's really obvious, but like just the fucking bizarre nature of the organism. Like every time it's revealed, it's like something you've never seen before.
Yeah.
It's different every time you see it. And it even escalates to the point of a full-on floating head with a tentacle holding it up. It gets insane. But the fact that like it has, like that stuff that freaks me out, at least, is like not understanding the biology of something. I don't know if it's just because I'm like, quote unquote, like logically driven or whatever, but just the weirdness of it is just so freaky to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Are you drawn to like stuff like this when it comes to body horror? Like, do you seek that kind of stuff out? Is that like when you're watching something like this? I mean, we did a reaction to it, so we can literally see how you like felt watching this. But when you're watching something like Annihilation, and there's this shot that you see of someone's intestines, right? And I won't go into it. When you see something like that, are you just grossed out? Are you now leaning in, trying to figure it out? Like, what's that feeling when you see something like that?
Yeah, it's definitely very viscerally, you know, not like, I don't want to say just frightening to me, but it is very unsettling to me. I think like, You know, our human bodies are very strange, you know, as it is. Outside of fantasy, sci-fi shit, just our normal human bodies are very weird. And this is like a weird pull, but I just discovered that I'm lactose intolerant recently. And the first indicator I got was this insanely weird gas bubble that built up inside me that I had to belch out over the course of hours. It hurt like a motherfucker, you know? And there's nothing more frustrating and kind of scary than feeling like you don't know what's going on inside of you.
Well, there was this feeling you also had, you were telling me, where you were like, I started feeling tingly and I thought I was just going to have a heart attack.
You know, yeah, exactly. And if you look it up online, that is kind of a thing that happens associated with like weird, I'm just calling it gas bubbles, but when you have that, you do feel like a chest and shoulder and arm pain a little bit. And it does say like it can feel similar to an oncoming heart attack. And so there was an inkling before I knew that where I felt like, oh, fuck. Am I about to die? Like, are we here?
I'm like, I feel so bad because I've obviously been lactose intolerant for the past 2 years. It made me before that, but it got bad to
I
where
thought it's been like 3 or 4 years or something.
Okay, maybe 3 or 4 years. Yeah, but
Still.
Point is, in our like close-knit friend group, you are kind of the only one that just didn't have any allergic reaction to food. You didn't have any sort of negative reaction to food.
Yeah.
And so I always said to you, I was like, man, look at you. You can just eat bread and eat ice cream like it's fucking nothing. Like you'll just go home and go to sleep afterwards. Like if I eat like a slice of pizza, like my night's done. Like it's just over. And I
Shout out lactose gang.
And you texted me yesterday. You were like, I just found out that orange chicken and honey sesame chicken from a Panda has dairy in it. And because of that, like I was just in the bathroom for the rest of the day. And I think I might be lactose intolerant. And I just texted, I'm like, man, I'm so sorry. Like,
It's like I think I've accepted the truth now.
fucking
That this is just
sucks.
what it is.
But yeah.
Going back though, there is like a weird thing about that. Yeah, when you go to the intestine scene from Annihilation or anything, I think body horror is kind of that frightening kind of medical fear that people have sometimes, and sometimes that does freak me out to think about like shit going on inside you that you don't really have control of.
Yeah, totally. Well, think about it this way, right? Like if you're studying to be in the medical field, or if you're a person interested in science, maybe you know a lot about what's in your body, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you're like a fitness trainer and are trying to learn about nutrition or whatever, you might know what's going on inside your body. But for the regular everyday people, including me and you, like the bodies that we live in, that we use to carry ourselves throughout the world, are still kind of a mystery to us, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's so much inside me that I don't understand. I don't know what is, that I have to go to a professional to figure out.
And hopefully they give you good advice or the right answer.
But isn't that crazy? Like the stuff that, like me, I don't know what's in me. And something like a tumor could be growing and I wouldn't know. And I don't even know what that tumor means. So I have to go to get some x-rays. And without that technology, they were just like, well, you're going to die. I don't know what to tell you. Like, so it's kind of, I think that's another aspect that body horror, and especially something like The Thing or stuff like Annihilation or whatever taps into, is that like, you don't know what's in you. And what if something in you became external?
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to talk about Kurt Russell a little bit. I think he is just like probably my favorite movie star that I discovered a little too late, you know? Not a little too late. I mean, he's still out there and kicking, but like, I just wish I knew about him earlier, because I felt like if I was a teenager and I knew about Kurt Russell, I would have lost my mind. Like he's so cool. But something that he's doing in this movie is like, it's very similar to his Escape from New York character, which is, he just doesn't have to do much to be cool. There's this like Clint Eastwood aspect to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where he doesn't have to say much. He doesn't have to move much, but like he can just be present and cool. And I don't know anything about this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know enough of his role, you know, once the shit starts hitting the fan, that he is clearly the most sensible one. Like,
I mean, Mac wants the flamethrower.
Yeah, he's the one who immediately is just like, oh, burn it, you know? And also, like, when they're all standing around, how he's putting together, okay, well, I know I'm human, and if you were all, you know, the Thing, you'd all attack me. So, I mean, some of you are human. Like, he's good at putting, like, those, you know, those clues together.
I think I just love characters that that immediately take action when something fucked up happens. Like they don't think a lot about it. They just do it. So I think a lot about like in Empire, Han Solo immediately taking his blaster out when he sees Darth Vader.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as a comparison.
That's like the best example of it.
But yeah, when the dogs are in the kennel all freaking out, how he immediately
pulls the fire alarm.
Where he cracks it with a beer can.
Yeah.
Which is already cooler than it would have been if he just pulled it.
And then it cuts to another character being like, Mac wants the flamethrower. Like, without waiting, he just does it.
Even in our reaction, we're like, yeah, give Mac the flamethrower.
Mac wants the flamethrower. Mac wants the what? That's what he said.
Give Mac the fucking flamethrower.
Oh, yeah. I know.
It became kind of a joke for us.
His beard, his big hat, everything about
hat,
it.
Man. It's the hat. It's so cool.
So if you guys want your day to be better, I highly recommend, if you have the Blu-ray to the thing, watch it with the commentary. The commentary has John Carpenter and Kurt Russell. And it's basically Kurt Russell laughing the entire time. And it's so much fun to watch the thing. You just hear Kurt Russell laugh a lot about like how they were making it.
Yeah.
And he's getting such a kick out of watching himself in a hat. And it's just amazing.
Is there anything about the nature of the thing that freaks you out at all, or is it more just the basic human interactions that freak you out? Because like the stuff you brought up is more in relation to like COVID and not trusting people. Is there anything about the alien in itself?
Okay, so what I'll say is that like to this day, I've seen this movie now 4 or 5 times since we did the reaction.
Same here, yeah.
I think we can say that it's become one of our favorite movies.
Yeah.
Which is a joy about like having the memory of what like doing the reaction to this, because there's not many times where you can literally watch yourself experience one of your favorite movies for the first time, you know? But to this day, whenever I sit down and watch the thing, I'm still so fucking shocked when the dog turns, right? Mm-hmm. And it's because I'm like, I have never seen something like this. My brain can't process what I'm watching. And that's the thing that really like, that's my experience watching this movie.
Yeah.
Is that I can't even like think about what I'm seeing. And so it's more of just like fascination when I watch like the thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't like scare me. And I think what scares me more is like the immediate mistrust that everyone has with each other. Mm. When Blair is immediately suspecting Clark.
Yeah, when he asked Clark, you know, okay, how long were you alone with the dog, and trying to get a feel for him, and Clark's like, why are you looking at me like that? And then it turns out later that Clark is innocent. It turns out he's just a human. Like he's the one that acts weird in the beginning that you're immediately suspicious of. And Blair even says, like, keep an eye on Clark. You know?
And I thought a lot about of how it wouldn't take much for us to turn into that. Mm-hmm. And I think we have like now a real life example of when COVID happened and when lockdown happened, how we were at grocery stores, how the racism and the homophobia came out even stronger through that time. When we were all going stir crazy and when we couldn't understand something, that caused the biggest rift. And maybe that was obvious all along, but I think like seeing that happen with real life experience through COVID, just like, and watching this movie now made me realize I'm like, oh, this is not far-fetched from what would happen in real life, how we would all react. It wouldn't take much for all of us to go insane and immediately like get mad at each other and mistrust each other, no matter how close we were.
Yeah, I think like the psychological element is what makes Lovecraftian horror so fascinating to me, is the fact that it drives people crazy in a way, because you're up against something that you don't understand or can't really comprehend. You know what I mean? That it's like this, you don't know what it wants. You just know it's taken over people and imitated, but you don't know if it's what its goal is, or if it even has one, or if it has even the abstract concepts of morality and, you know, ideas or anything like that. It's just a thing that just does.
Yeah, and you don't even know if there's going to be an end game to this. You don't even, you can't process it. Like, I remember with COVID, that was a thing. I was just like, is this going to be the rest of our lives? And even if it's not lockdown, are we just always going to be nervous now? Yeah. Is it, I mean, the joke is like whenever someone coughs, you get scared, but it is true. I still feel that way. You get sick and I immediately am terrified.
Have you been tested?
Have you been tested? Can you get tested? You should do it because I saw you last week. You know what I mean? And some of that is reasonable worry, but I remember you telling me at one point, you're like, I feel like a lot of this has gone from just genuine like health concerns to just psychological like warfare.
A little bit, yeah.
And you know, I think that's why that stuff affected me more.
Sure.
What about you? Like, is the
I'm more interested like in the cosmic aspect of it. You know what I mean? Like, and again, like, it just not to harp on it so much, but that is the thing that I like about that type of horror is that the idea of beings that make our problems look so stupid. You know what I mean? That like these are human beings that are just normal guys in Antarctica trying to work, and then they're up against an alien that doesn't give a fuck about what they're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of Lovecraftian horror is about that, like witnessing things that your brain isn't meant to comprehend. That's like bigger than you. That's like a bigger universal existential thing that like you can't wrap your mind around, so it makes you crazy.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on, because that's the movie is like becomes not even about survival. It's about just like, we just gotta try our best to stop this thing, and we're not gonna make it.
Yeah. The best thing they can do is just die with it.
Yeah,
And that's pretty fucked up.
and what's insane is that we don't even know if they defeated it.
Yeah, you don't.
I think it's important to mention that this movie flopped and was a huge disaster in the box office when this movie came out.
Critically too, obviously.
Critically too. That's the crazy part. I think a lot of people have talked about this, so maybe we don't need to harp on it forever. Yeah. But it is insane that like critics fucking hated this movie.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like, this is bad. It was like this is vile and should not be watched.
Yeah, this is like a violation to cinema.
They were almost like talking about it like it was this X-rated movie of like, how dare they bring this filth in the theater.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, right? Because like Alien was a huge hit, and it changed like cinema forever. Like it changed like how we look at sci-fi forever. It maybe opened doors to sci-fi in a new way, right? And the thing was this immediate like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I think that's because of the fact that there is, unlike Alien, there is no closure. Like you said, the Lovecraftian aspect of it, like unlike The Thing, unlike Alien, you can't understand what this is. The poster is not doing it any favors. The poster is one of the great posters of all time, but in hindsight, when you look at it, you're like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, and it's also a lot more vulgar the way it portrays the alien. Like in Alien, the Xenomorph, that movie is a lot more slick. The way it's made, it's very clean, it's very cold.
A lot of the shots of the Xenomorph are in the dark.
Yeah, and I think the Thing is like, stomach rips open and there's it rips his arms off and the head comes out. Like, it's way more...
The chest burster, I mean, this movie's version of the chest burster scene, it happens in broad, like, not broad daylight, but like in brightly lit hospital lighting.
Exactly.
So it's like, you have nowhere else but to look at that.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating that everyone was like rejected it immediately.
I know. It is weird because they're not that different on paper.
I think John Carpenter talks about this a lot, where he said people weren't ready for a downer. They wanted an upper. Around the same time The Thing comes out, E.T. comes out.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And that is one of the most hilarious like stories ever.
One movie portrays aliens one way, the other portrays them a very different way.
One movie portrays aliens as this like bonding of this kid and like friendship that you find across the stars.
Yeah.
And the other is like, humans are fucked forever. Like, it's just and it felt like the wrong time for this movie, but also the right time, because the special effects are just revolutionary and they couldn't have been done a decade before. But it's just like, it's literally a Marty McFly, your kids are going to love it.
Yeah, exactly. Kids, you guys aren't ready for that one, but your kids are going to love it.
And, it's just, it makes the movie better in some way.
Sure. Yeah, it feels like it's like this movie belongs to us, even though it's not really us, because it's more generations before that, obviously. But it does feel like it's like, ooh, we're part of this cult now.
Yeah, and that kind of always happens with movies that were infamous flops but become so revered.
Yeah, we just did Last Action Hero. That was an example of that too.
But even Last Action Hero, to this day, everyone's like, oh, that's a fun one. It's not amazing. That's true. The Thing has now become like
one of the greatest sci-fi horror movies ever made.
Like one of the 100 greatest movies ever made.
Yeah.
Straight up. Like, and yeah, maybe it's not on the Sight and Sound poll, but I bet a lot of critics would be like, yeah, that's in my top 100 for sure.
Sure.
And like the bounce back, I don't think there has been a movie like that has had that kind of bounce back before.
Yeah, doesn't Tarantino consider it like one of the perfect movies?
Yeah, so interesting enough, and this goes back to like the stuff that you and I grew up watching, it's interesting to watch The Thing and realize all the stuff that we love and we grew up watching was inspired by The Thing in one way or the other. But Tarantino loved The Thing. And he said what's amazing about that movie is the immersive feeling you get from it. Like, you really feel like you're in that unit with those dudes that are freezing to death. And I felt it last night putting it on after the 5th time and knowing what I was going to get myself into, and having seen all the behind the scenes featurette, I still felt like I was with Kurt Russell holding the dynamite and the flare. Like,
Yeah.
and he said that immersive feeling was so special. And he said, I wanted that same feeling with Reservoir Dogs. And so the structure of Reservoir Dogs is a bunch of guys going stir crazy after something horrible's happening, not understanding who's who, and each feeling like they're betraying each other.
Yeah.
And not understanding what the real intentions of everyone else is. He said that was very much like, I wanted the tension that I felt in the theater of watching The Thing. I wanted that same tension in Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, and I think he pulled it off. I love Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, good movie.
Not a hot take on that one, you know? I like that movie.
Personally, I think he did it. I think he really did a good job with that movie. No, but I get you. Like, yeah, it's and it's kind of amazing, right? Like, you would never put 2 and 2 together, but it makes complete sense.
I mean, The Thing, yeah, exactly. It is structured kind of like a whodunit in its own way.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It has those kind of murder mystery tropes.
And now, like, every time you and I watch, like, a sci-fi movie and there's this big, gooey, colorful special effect, we're immediately like, oh, it looks like something from The Thing.
Yeah, I can't remember. You have not seen the prequel movie they did for this?
I have not.
I haven't either. I heard there was, like, a lot of, like, hullabaloo about the practical effects being replaced with CGI.
Well, that's a tragic story behind it, because I have seen the behind-the-scenes of, like, test footage where they shot test footage with the special effects, and it looks amazing.
Oh, that's too bad.
And the studio literally, because the director made it with the intention of, like, I want to bring back those special effects. It's like, oh, cute.
No, the opposite. We're like, oh, that's too bad that the studios fucked him over.
And the
on
studios
that.
were too nervous.
Yeah.
Because they thought the audience was used to now this advanced CGI technology, and they wanted that. And they covered it up. And it's just, it's tragic. Like, but no, I haven't seen it. But I really want to watch the 1950s, The Thing from Another World.
Yeah, you know, my English teacher in sophomore year said that was his favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, you know, like, John Carpenter loves that movie. I mean, it makes sense he made The Thing, but still. And also the title card for this movie, The Thing, how it, like, you know, comes up through burnt letters, it almost seems. It's almost exactly the same as the original.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Well, that's what's crazy about it, too. It's just like, shows spaceship going through, shows the date, and then it says present day or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Very, very minimal. I mean,
we see a spaceship, we don't know anything else about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't he tells you pretty much what you need to know. You know?
I'm not trying to downgrade Alien, but if you want to make a comparison, right? Like, it's... Even Alien is doing all this table setting in the first hour. And it's necessary. It's a different movie. I'm not trying to say one's better than the other. I just want to be clear. I fucking love Alien. But it's kind of amazing that, like, the Thing even strips down that aspect of it. It's like, no, we don't even need that.
Yeah.
It's very clear that John Carpenter was a big fan of Clint Eastwood. I mean, you can read about him always wanting to have worked with Clint Eastwood, but he could never get him.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
And it's clear because Clint Eastwood was almost famous for, like, his characters having very little dialogue and just saying something with a look. And going back to Kurt Russell a little bit, I mean, that is kind of what McReady's doing.
Yeah, he's not a huge talker, but he always says the right things.
At the right time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, his actions, he's one of those characters where his actions say more about him than his words. Yeah. And obviously, like, we all know the famous character introduction where he's playing chess with the computer.
Yeah.
And then he gets beat, and then he just dumps his cocktail in it.
And we see, like, a small setup of, like, these two guys playing ping pong. Like, I think it's Copper and Gary playing ping pong.
I thought it was like Blair.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. But
I remember you said in the reaction, though, you're like, oh, we opened with a couple old farts playing ping pong. You said that in the video, I remember.
Hard cut to these old farts playing table tennis.
That's kind of awesome.
And... Well, you really do open with, like, the helicopter shooting up the dogs, which is insane. But we don't know anything about them. We don't know what their job is. We see that they're bored. Yeah. So they've been here for a while. Now, in a normal movie, we're like, okay, this is the setup. They've been here for a minute. There's something crazy that happens. We're going to learn about what they do. Nope.
Yeah.
That's another crazy part, is that we have no idea what they even do there.
I know. They're just part of some government sanctioned base in Antarctica. That's it.
Yeah. It's so
You know, they all can use guns, but they're also very scientific.
it's not a huge surprise that at that time the movie didn't do well, because it doesn't hold your hand at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what I love about it. It's so simple, and that's what makes it so timeless. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like you have to have any knowledge of really anything to come into it.
Yeah, I think I wrote in my notes that like some movies aren't meant to be loved immediately. It goes back to the Marty McFly thing I quoted. I don't know about you, but this movie did teach me a lot about like what of the value of the lack of information.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, oftentimes people, you know, over-rely on information to make a story have more weight or be more interesting. But I've always thought, like, you don't need to know shit. I mean, even going back to some of the most common cornerstones of movies, like, you don't know anything about Han Solo's backstory. You know, he's just a cool guy who smuggles things.
Yeah.
And you don't need to know so many details. Like,
no. I mean, we do know now.
I know, you're right. I know. Oh, man, I forgot about that one. But before you get me worked up, there is tremendous value in just keeping a story extremely simple. You know, I mean, like, people always talk when people first watch Napoleon Dynamite, how they'll be like, wait, what time period is this in? It doesn't fucking matter what time period. Who cares? You know?
Yeah.
You know, some projects just work.
Oh, no, totally. I think because I think before the thing, I used to get very impatient with movies that like didn't just explain it to me, but were so cold. And I think this is gonna be a weird comparison, but if it wasn't for the thing, I don't think I would have been able to love Tenet the way I do, which is an insane comparison.
I get you. I know what you're saying, though.
But I think the ability to enjoy a movie for what it's trying to do, rather than trying to put your own expectations onto a movie, is a skill that I learned after watching the thing. Like, I do feel like I watch movies differently after seeing this movie, no matter what kind of genre it is.
Yeah, I like that, though, because I think there's a weird relationship people get with movies where some people are like, impress me. By default, I'm not going to like you until you impress me.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you go into the open arms, like, hey, let's see what ride you take me along. I'm just glad we got to hang out.
And what's so special about John Carpenter with this movie is that he wasn't trying to make some like transgressive movie that is going to leave people cold. You know how some filmmakers are like, I want you to hate this movie because like you're eventually going to understand it, but you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
He wanted to just make a really like nasty horror movie with like revolutionary special effects.
Mm-hmm.
But I think his instincts naturally are ones of, I don't need to explain all this to you. Why is this you're boring me with all of this?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think his natural instincts are to strip things down, unless the story calls for it. Like, In the Mouth of Madness and Big Trouble in Little China are pointedly convoluted, but they're for reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And but for him, it's like, if the movie's not calling for me to explain a lot of stuff, then I'm not going to do it. And that's kind of what I love about it. It's just that it's not him trying to be like weird and like, you know, different.
Yeah, I mean, it keeps the story simple too. You know what I mean? When you have something really weird, like a bodily alien that takes people over and digests them, it's like, you know just enough and you don't need to know why. You know, you don't need to know what its functions are. That actually enhances it. I think, like, what's that movie? I mean, what's that movie? A Quiet Place. I remember people saying that one in the sequels tried to explain too much.
Yeah. I mean, that's the problem with those movies in general, is that like, at least the sequels. I haven't seen Day One, so I should only talk about Part Two.
Just the sequel, because I haven't seen Part Two. I really like Part One.
The thing that makes Part One cool is that it's just like a family drama of this little barn and everything. And
yeah.
And you don't know how these aliens arrived. You don't know any other information.
And we didn't care. Nobody cared.
I never cared.
Yeah.
Listen, I saw Quiet Place Part 2 in theaters. And it was kind of like one of the first movies I saw back in theaters with a huge audience, at least. And I remember the opening being so good and it being this promise of like an amazing movie. that I think like I actually started like tearing up, but not because I was like choked about what's happening, but it was just the idea of like, we're back in the movies.
I'm back in the theater and I'm seeing a good movie.
I'm seeing like an action blockbuster. Like, it was just that. So I did have that feeling, but I think overall that movie kind of aged poorly in my head after a while. But what I do care about is this family.
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah. And so I think with The Thing, you do care about just the basic human characters and hoping that they can outsmart it, because it kind of becomes a game of chess, which is funny that the opening starts with that.
I was going to ask you, do you genuinely care about the characters? Like, what, like...
Well, I'm invested. I'm invested in, and I'm genuinely like, I like seeing the characters be smart, because the characters are smart, which is one thing I really love about this movie, is that they do things to really try to outsmart it. They don't just sit there accusing each other and quizzing each other. How much do you know about this? Like, this is a perfect imitation of another human being. And so they actually end up doing like the blood test is obviously the big example of how smart they get later.
Okay, let's talk about the blood test, because obviously in this podcast we're not talking about specific scenes, because off mic we've been talking about how like it's difficult to podcast about this movie because everyone's talked about this movie endlessly.
It's all been done, yeah.
But I would like to get specific about the blood test.
Yeah,
it's my favorite.
I'm down.
It's my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah, it's so fucking
like,
cool.
Number one, it is such a genius concept in terms of like thriller horror filmmaking of tying them all down on one couch and testing the blood. And it's also very funny and stupid to do that, because it's just like, did McCready not think about the fact that if one of them turned, they're all tied together?
Well, exactly. That's what's so cool, is that the tension never stops. You know what I mean? Like, even after they discover that Clark was actually human, and so then that becomes a whole other thing. Where it's like,
that he shot Clark.
Yeah, we just killed a man.
It's a moment from childhood that makes you a murderer, doesn't it?
Yeah. Childs
is also great.
Yeah.
Childs is so cool.
Keith David,
who it was such a pleasure seeing him in Nope.
Yeah, he's amazing.
I was like, you can tell like Jordan Peele, being a Carpenter fan, like brought Keith David in. And also Keith David's been great for a while, but it's just like Jordan Peele's expressed his fandom for John Carpenter very clearly, and that just feels like a clever nod.
Yeah, very much. And I remember in the reaction, I famously said Keith Richards by accident a couple times.
I just cannot believe any of this voodoo bullshit.
Is that Keith Richards?
Yeah. If you make a mistake in the reaction video and we don't catch it in the edit, that stays with us. That becomes our legacy.
It will haunt us forever.
There's a handful of reactions where I just know I made one mistake, and now I'll get those comments for the rest of my life. Yeah. Like, in my deathbed, I will receive a comment that, why did you cut out the Afro pick scene in Spaceballs? And I'll also get comments like, in my funeral, there'll be a eulogy of talking about how did you not know Danny DeVito was the cat in Last Action Hero. Like, these moments will stay with us.
Yeah, you're right. Here lies Chris. His name was Keith David.
You fucking idiot. No, people aren't that mean.
But yeah,
that couch scene.
Yeah.
Like you said, it is just a smart idea to test the blood.
And the tension doesn't stop. Like, even after, like you mentioned, is that even after they isolate the alien, when they do the blood test and the whatever tendril jumps out, and then you realize, oh shit, now they're all just tied with it. And then just the flamethrower just doesn't work.
Well, what's effective about it too is that when it cuts to his name is not Windows. What's his name?
Palmer.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, when it cuts to Palmer and he's like shaking,
spazzing, yeah.
Like 2 seconds before, there was a cut to him and he was just normal and bored.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is connecting it back to the themes that really affected me in this watch was that when you don't know what's going on in your own body, and that's the terrifying part, right? Like, Palmer had no idea.
Yeah.
Or maybe he did. Or maybe that's the perfect imitation. Who knows? But like, from my perspective, he had no clue.
That's one question I always had too, was like, if, let's say in another world, McCready was the Thing, which, I mean, I'm sure you can interpret it that he maybe was at the end.
And I'm sure there are people who do.
Yeah. But let's just say McCready was the Thing the whole time. Would the imitation be so perfect that he would catch himself? Like, when he's trying to help catch the Thing?
I don't know.
Because it's like, if someone was like really smart in the group and they were a perfect imitation and everyone's suspicious of each other, they have to put on a front that they're helping isolate the Thing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, would the Thing catch itself by accident?
No, totally. And also the whole idea of just like, it doesn't, it just wants to freeze to death,
Yeah.
It knows that it can't survive out here.
Yeah.
I also think this is when like the movie just climbs up a notch in terms of special effects and what they're able to do. Like when it just like when Palmer just goes to the ceiling. Imagine in like the 80s seeing something like that.
Yeah.
Something that visceral and being like, oh my God, I just want to see Elliot ride a bike again.
I know, right? I know. Then takes a big old bite out of his upper half too.
Like you know what's crazy, man, is that I still haven't seen stuff that looks like this.
Yeah. I haven't either.
And maybe it's because the age of special effects are still withering away, and now like we have become CGI heavy, so we're never going to see something this real and visceral ever again.
Yeah.
But like even when it's the chest burster scene and everything, I'm like, I've never seen something like this to this day.
But the defibrillators, anemone. But yeah, right when it goes through, then it like literally bites his hands off.
But the shot of the head stretching off the table and then the spider legs coming out and then it crawling away.
Yeah.
That looks insane.
I know.
You want to talk about Rob Bottin?
Who's that? I'm sorry.
He's the guy who he's the guy who did the special effects.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course. I thought you were talking about an actor, and I was like, wait, I didn't know there was a guy named Rob in that.
No. So Rob Bottin famously was 22 years old when he worked on the thing.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read out something really quickly because I love this detail.
Yeah.
Wait 1 second.
I think the closest, at least from what I've seen, of like creative and grotesque creatures isn't in movies anymore. I see it like, in From Software video games, like, then Bloodborne and the Dark Souls video games.
Oh, sure. But I'm talking about in live action.
In live action. Exactly. I'm just saying the closest that, like, I think we're seeing that, like, grotesque creativity.
But I feel like in animation and stuff, that's always happening.
Oh, for sure. I'm just saying the best example if people are interested in that.
Sure.
I recommend looking up the boss fights on Bloodborne. And I'm sure all those games have their own creative villains, but like Bloodborne has some fucking wild boss fights.
Rob Bottin, he worked on the thing 7 days a week, including late nights for a year. I think John Carpenter told the story of like, yeah, we had to rush him to the ER for lack of sleep and just like he was really like struggling. And he basically produced every creature effect. They had to really figure out how much lighting to use on the effects because they wanted to make sure it was not too bright so it wouldn't highlight the fakeness of it.
Yeah.
But they also, like, John Carpenter was very clear, like, the most horrifying things should happen in the brightest lights. So it was like this balance that they had to find.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say too. Like, I think I've always been a believer in like when people criticize a certain facet of a movie, right? When, acting or whatever, camera work, any of that stuff. I wish more people took into consideration all the other pieces and how they affect each other too. Like, let's say there could be an amazing special effects artist who makes some great latex designs, but if it's not well lit and well shot, everyone's going to say the special effects are shit.
It's the same thing with like shooting on location.
Nowadays,
there's like these like fucking backseat filmmakers on Twitter that are always showing color grading of movies. And I'm like, fucking shut up. But aside from that, they're always like, wow, just shot on green screen. And some movies, like there'll be replies. And it's like, actually, they shot on location, but it looks like they shot on green screen because they lit it so poorly.
Exactly. And same when people say the acting's really bad, sometimes the script just really sucks and it's impossible to read it, or even editing. Editing can 100% affect acting.
Maybe the environment on set was so horrible that the actors were like, I just need to get through this.
Either that or a director is really like stressful to be around and you're not really comfortable acting. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it.
I think it's obviously like okay to criticize a performance. Of
course, everything can be criticized. I guess I'm more advocating for like consider the other things too.
Yeah.
Because
sure,
let's say there's a scene someone did and they read a line and the editing wasn't good enough, so it went too long and you awkwardly stared at their face after they said the line.
Well, we also talk a lot about like child actors when it comes to this.
Sure.
I think you are always in the boat of like when I think I can be very quick. I was like, oh, that kid was horrible in that movie or show or whatever. And you are very quick to be like, listen, that script wasn't doing that actor any favors, or like that whole project wasn't doing that kid any favors, or that kid was young. So like, what are you know what I mean? So like you said, it's important to consider all factors.
Yeah.
But okay, so Rob Bottin also. Now I'm mentioning all this stuff because this is the stuff that I fucking like love, right? You know what other movies he worked on? It's some of our favorite shit, man.
Yeah.
It's the stuff when we watch it, we're like, oh, that reminds me like something of the thing. So he's worked on Total Recall.
Sure. Okay.
Total Recall, I would argue, like next to The Thing, has some of the best special effects in Hollywood.
I know. I love Total Recall. That's another one I want to cover on here.
RoboCop, Basic Instinct. So the Paul Verhoeven like movies. Fight Club, Seven,
Okay.
Game of Thrones.
Wow. Okay.
And you know what else? Mr. Deeds.
What did he do for Mr. Deeds?
I don't remember. So I saw Mr. Deeds when I was a kid a lot. I haven't seen it as an adult. So I basically really don't remember that movie that much.
I don't know if I've ever seen that one.
I remember John Turturro being really funny in that movie.
I didn't even know he was in it.
Oh yeah, he's in it. He likes money as well.
He too is a fan of money.
Oh, he's one of our most respected actors that also loves money. Yeah. But now I'm going to mention one more thing. You know who shot this movie? Dean Cundey.
Oh, who's that?
He's done John Carpenter projects like Halloween, Escape from New York, The Fog, Big Trouble in Little China. So he's worked heavily with John Carpenter.
Nice.
Back to the Future trilogy.
Shit. Okay.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Damn.
Jurassic Park.
They're getting too sexy.
And you know what else? Jack and Jill.
Stop fucking capping them off with Happy Madison movies. I hate that it happens to be in chronological order too. Like it's not like you're really like, sneaking it in. It doesn't feel forced, but I know you well enough that's totally forced.
So let me tell you the story behind this. I was like trying to look up what other movies Rob Bottin has done. And when I found Mr. Deeds, I got really excited. I was like, I'm gonna put that in the list. And then I was like, okay, Dean Cundey, I've seen his name in a lot of credits. And then I saw he did Jack and Jill, and I'm like, oh, the connection.
So you're telling me he's the one that got Adam Sandler in drag and gave him that fat suit?
Oh, no. Dean Cundey's the cinematographer.
Oh, cinematographer. Okay, so he's the one that filmed that movie then.
Yeah. He's shot Adam Sandler.
He had to watch it happen.
Yeah.
What's my name?
Dunkachino.
It's a whole new game.
Dunkachino.
You want creamy goodness? I'm your friend. Say hello to my chocolate blend. He's like just standing there dancing.
Oh, man.
I mean, like, I'll always defend that scene too. We're always ones to be like, the scene's supposed to be cringy.
It's supposed, like, literally, it ends with Al Pacino be like, that no one can see that. So it's not like people like to share, like, oh man, Al Pacino went downhill. I'm like, no, that scene, his character's embarrassed by that.
Yeah, like, we can shit on the whole movie of Jack and Jill all we want. Don't get me wrong, we're not defending the movie in itself, but that scene, I'm like, use the proper context.
I mean, I haven't seen that movie in a while. I've only seen it once, so I don't want to say anything about it negatively.
Just shut your mouth.
I want to what? I just want to give it another shot. This is your like I don't know, your negative Adam Sandler propaganda that you want to share on the channel. I'm not going to have any of it.
Spreading hate and vitriol towards the Sandman.
We've done Happy Madison Classics commentary tracks on our Patreon, so if you want to go check them out.
Yeah, so that's why it's so raw for us right now.
Yeah, I basically forced Chris to watch like a lot of the Happy Madison Classics with me.
No, to be clear, our patrons kind of did. They got voted on.
And I got excited when they voted on it.
Yeah.
They know me very well. Okay, so let's talk about this movie again. A somewhat lesser movie than Jack and Jill.
Doesn't have quite the same, you guys can't see if you're listening to this, but we're both rubbing our hands together in weird ways. Anyway.
I have a lot of brain fog right now. I can't think. But anyways, like I said earlier, this movie is basically in its third act, they realize we're all dying in here. Blair's in the tool shed. They trapped him in there. And suddenly he's disappeared because they want to do the blood test on him and they don't see him.
Yeah.
And they just realize they got to blow the place up. And leading up to this, we see the big motherfucker, that one ugly motherfucker.
Yeah.
As Arnold would say. You know what's funny? Like I forget that we get one last transformation.
Yeah, where it has like little pieces of different organic matter on it. Like you can see like dog pieces on it, right?
Yeah, but you know what's funny? And I don't know why. I don't think like I'm really scared of that. Mm-hmm. I'm more scared of what we see right before, which is Blair sticking his hands into, what's the character's name?
Oh man, what is his name?
Knowles,
Knowles.
the cook. Blair sticking his hands in him and spreading his face through his fingers, and you see like that stretchy material. And then you see one shot through Childs' perspective of Blair dragging him through his stretched mouth. Mm-hmm. That disturbed me more than that big.
Oh yeah, same here, same here. And Blair's like blank, calm face. Like he doesn't look like his heart reached any higher beat than it would have if he was just standing there.
Do you remember that small moment? Well, right before he sticks his hand in there, he like turns around.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. He just looks so calm, and like he doesn't even look cold. He just looks like Blair spacing out a little bit.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of people watching this in the theater for the first time. They're like, okay, they killed it. Cool. And then you sit down and Childs comes.
Yep.
And he's like, where were you, Childs? And then you're like, shit, it could be Childs. Or it could be McReady, like you said earlier. Was he like the perfect imitation? You don't know.
Yeah.
And the balls on this movie to just end there. But it's the moment where like Kurt Russell starts smiling as they're handing each other the J&B. Which is great, like amazing product placement for J&B, I guess. Like there's such beautiful shots of it just laying there.
If you're gonna die, drink J&B.
Yeah, it's literally that.
Yeah.
And right when they're handing each other and they start laughing, the music starts like dum dum
dum dum,
and then cuts to that wide shot of everything burning down.
Just fades to black, and you're like, the end.
And you're like, what? I'm just supposed to walk out?
And it's like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, if only they knew like one way or the other. Right? Like if they both could be just humans that are just waiting to die, and instead of working together to see what they can do, they just sit there just waiting for one to make a move.
But what would they do?
I don't know. Something.
But that's the thing. It's just like, well, everything's burnt down. We're out in the cold.
They're going to freeze to death.
What are we going to do?
That's true too. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's literally no hope.
I know people have tried to pick it apart, like especially even in our own comment section on the reaction, people have said like, well, notice that fog doesn't come out when he breathes or when, or you can interpret it that he put like gasoline in the bottle. So that's why he laughed because he drank it.
But there's also this very like honest thing that could have happened, which was like, okay, I want to leave it open-ended. And then that's it. John Carpenter was basically like, I bet John Carpenter didn't think about the fog. Or any of that
I'm of the same boat. You know, that was probably happy accident that can leave it open for fun interpretation for viewers.
Yeah. I really wish he made another movie, John Carpenter. Like, I know he's old.
Like now you want him to make another?
Yeah, but I mean, like, I know he's old and everything, but Scorsese is like 80 years old and he made Killers of the Flower Moon.
John Carpenter, he's not going to do that.
I know. He's just going to complain about money, which fair enough.
Fair enough. He's not wrong.
Very influential movie, both two movies, but both for us and our channel. So it's very special doing a podcast of this.
Yeah. It was nice to come back to it.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Are we good to wrap up? Sorry.
Yeah, wrap up.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much to our patrons for supporting us again and again. Last but not least, stay nice, dudes.